Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Department of State Services confirms arrest of former chairman of Pension Reform Task Team, Abdulrasheed Maina, as DSS claims his son pulled a gun on officials at the point of arrest. Tribunal upholds elections of governors Tambuwal of Sokoto State, Simon Lalong of Plateau, and Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano State. Affirms their victory as duly elected governors. Senate launches investigation into failure to review provisions of Production Sharing Contract Act in the oil and gas sector over loss of about 7 trillion naira over a period of 20 years. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo admits he was part of the phone call in which President Donald Trump asked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden. Top stories and others, please visit our website, channelstv.com. youtube.com/channelsweb has videos of our shows. The economy handed over to Nigerian leaders on the 1st of October 1960 was largely in the areas of agriculture, mining and trade, with crude oil discovery and commercial quantity at Oloibiri, Delta State in 1958. Over the past 5 decades, Nigeria has run through a boom and bust period of economic cycle with little or no development plan that has impacted the majority in a positive sense of inclusiveness, social welfare, and wealth creation. In concluding our focus on Nigeria's independence anniversary, Channel Television's business editor, Bosun Omofaye, highlights some of the country's attempts at economic growth and development to find out if Nigeria's future could be found in what had been neglected since independence.
From independence in 1960 into the Civil War period and beyond, Nigeria's various military and civilian administrations had never been short of economic policy ideas, framework, agenda, and programs of action. But as the years turn into decades, it becomes evident that Nigeria requires more than a mountain of paperwork of ideas in order to deliver growth, development, wealth creation, and a meaningful living standards to the rapidly increasing population.
Quality of life has deteriorated. So obvious, nobody can counter that. I went to university in the early mid-70s. I know I'm here in Nigeria, University of Lagos, and I know the quality of education, quality of life, and I just want to use that as an indicator. And I'm sure you can say that for several other areas, important areas of this country.
October 1st, Nigeria's independence anniversary is usually a day of pomp and praises. But that is changing fast, as majority of Nigerians reflect soberly on the poor state of the economy, social infrastructure, and unemployment, among other malaise. Today, the Buhari's administration's second term has taken off, running against the hourglass, looking to beat the scorecard of the previous regimes.
What we hope to be able to achieve is to move the revenue performance from 55% that we attained in 2018 to 85% in the next 3 to 4 years. Because if we don't do that, we will continue to suffer significantly in our capacity to, in our function of servicing the budget of the national budget.
As the bell tolls for Nigeria's 2019 independence anniversary, the current economic data shows more daunting challenges ahead. Economic growth is soft, foreign brick and mortar investments are flagging, manufacturing is sluggish, and trade balance not yet in big favor of Nigeria. If Nigeria's economic strides in the past 59 years had been largely unimpressive, the future is threatened by new and emerging risks, both at home and globally. Government officials have acknowledged these challenges, but believe there are enough reasons to celebrate.
Independence Day for us is a joyous occasion, but also a sobering one, because we are beset with a lot of developmental challenges, looking at how far we have come. Ideally, we should be far ahead of where we are right now as a people. But nevertheless, President Muhammadu Buhari's administration is not sitting on its oars, but working to ensure better livelihoods for the Nigerian people.
According to Index Mundi report of 2018, the percentage of Nigeria's population below 60 years of age is about 92.8, while the youth dependency ratio is 83. This means that the majority of Nigerians today were unborn at independence and are looking forward to reap the economic benefits of what President Muhammadu Buhari spoke about at the first June 12 Democracy Day event.
This administration is laying the foundation and taking bold steps in transforming our country and liberating our people from the shackles of poverty. For the next 4 years, we will remain committed to improving the lives of people by consolidating efforts to address these key issues.
Bosin Omofaye, Channels Television News.
I'm being joined now on the news at 10 by Mr. Kyari Bukar, the former chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, for more insights into the performance of the economy since independence. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really wanted to start with a question that we were discussing just before, we came on. But let's just begin with a summary of Nigeria's economic history since independence. Bosin talked about a boom and a bust.
That is typical of, globally, we go through booms and busts. But in the case of Nigeria, there have been, the cycles were more frequent than even the global boom and bust cycles. But ideally, it's something that happens once every 7 to 10 years. And in our situation, usually it is linked directly to the price of oil. Anytime price of oil shoots up, even if it is for a short period of time, there would be that rosy picture of how the economy is going to be, and then we go into town like a drunken sailor, thinking that nothing is going to happen tomorrow. So we do not, as a nation, save for the rainy day. And then as soon as oil prices start to decline, then we go into a panic mode and go on a borrowing binge, which basically means we dig ourselves further down as the saying goes, you should stop when you have gone too far. And those lessons, unfortunately, have never hit us so that we adjust ourselves. There has been an attempt during Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's term as finance minister, where we had the excess crude account as a mechanism for savings down the road, as well as the act that created the NSIA, which is the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, that's supposed to also be investing for future generations. Unfortunately, even that seed corn, we tend to raid them much more frequently than we ought to.
I'm curious to know what season we are in, what season you think we're in, and if you see any ray of hope, getting us through this season.
It's actually very tough to characterize. I think one of the questions you asked earlier before we got on the air was whether we are out of recession. Yeah. Technically speaking, as far as economists are concerned, yes, we are. We got into recession mid-2016 and got out by early 2017, right? Because, but the problem is that how fast are we growing? And that's very stark in the realities of our growth situation. Our annual growth rate in 2014 was 6.1%, GDP growth rate. And the population of Nigeria was growing on the average at about 2.6%. Now, that was the only year in the last 5 years that we have had a growth greater than our population growth. The year 2015, it was more or less 2.7 or so percent. The year 2016 was negative 1.5%. And then the remaining 3 or so years, we've had approximately 2% to 2%. And that means that we have been growing at a negative rate, meaning that every year the average Nigerian is getting poorer than they were a year ago. And that's the reality.
Yeah, so how easy would it be engineering a new direction for the economy?
I will give credit to what the president mentioned in the speech yesterday, which was the fact that we need to focus on diversifying the economy. I think the real situation is that it is not that the economy is not diversified, it is that the federal government's revenue base is not diversified. And to that extent, those of the states as well. So the key is how do we boost the economy to the extent that what the governments collect in taxes and levies would basically be adequate enough for us to meet our expenditure source. Because right now, as we look at the last 3 or so years of this government, we've been borrowing more every year. In dollar terms, I believe that in 2015, total debt, both domestic and foreign, was around $33 billion. The foreign debt was less than $5 billion. Last year, 2018, the foreign debt had gone up to $20 billion, and the domestic debt was around $44 billion. So total debt was in the order of about $60 billion, which is nearly 2 times what we had 4 years ago. Now, the problem is not the debt. The problem is the debt servicing. And the debt service ratio had gone from about 30% 4 or 5 years ago to over 65% this last year. And it might even go higher. Now,
and we might be borrowing more.
We may, that's right. In fact, we are now discussing about $2.5 billion from the World Bank, which is going to hit us this year. So essentially, and then when you look at the revenue, budgeted revenue to actual revenue that the government had that the federal government had, it is about half of the budgeted revenue that we collect, which means that the problem with Nigeria is collection of revenue, blocking of revenue leakages, and also living beneath
within our means.
Exactly. So we have to cut our cord according to our size. And that may actually mean taking some drastic steps, if you ask me. Because if it were a privately run company, they have to take some drastic measures in terms of cutting their expenses and making things more efficient.
I think the former Minister of the Economy, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, also gave that advice about cutting our coat according to our cloth. Thank you so much, Mr. Kyari Bukka, for speaking with us on the News at 10.
You're welcome.
A pleasure. When we return on the News at 10, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo admits he was part of the phone call in which President Donald Trump asked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden. That's on the international scene with Around the World in 5. Join us again.